Humans are bizarre. No, seriously. That's not just my opinion as a Voraxian diplomat. It's practically scientific fact at this point. I should know. I have spent the last 7 orbital cycles studying them. The way they communicate? Absolutely puzzling. The things they find amusing? Completely baffling. Their physical forms? Utterly horrifying. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for Alara Dunst. Ambassador Grixnor, your next appointment has arrived, my assistant, Plek, announced through the communication panel, his voice carrying that distinctive warble that indicates stress in our species. I sighed, my respiratory sacs deflating dramatically as I stared out the viewport at the endless void of space. The United Galactic Assembly Station orbited the neutral planet Nexus 9. It is a glorified chunk of rock that somehow became the center of interstellar diplomacy simply because nobody wanted it. Send her in, I replied, adjusting my ceremonial robe to cover all 6 of my sensory appendages. Humans find them unsettling, apparently. Rich coming from creatures with those, what do they call them? Fingers? Disgusting little wiggly things. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and in walked Alara Dunst. 5 feet 7 inches of human female, with what humans would consider auburn hair and green eyes. I have been trained to recognize these attributes, though the color spectrum humans perceive is laughably limited. Ambassador Grixnor. What a pleasure to finally meet you in person, she said, extending her hand in that peculiar human greeting ritual. I reluctantly extended my primary appendage, careful to retract my toxin glands. The pleasure is mine, Translator Dunst. Your reputation precedes you. She smiled, showing those flat, primitive teeth humans have. All good things, I hope. Your linguistic capabilities are renowned, I replied diplomatically. What I didn't mention was how the Zorgethian delegation still refuses to discuss the incident that occurred during trade negotiations last cycle. Something about a mistranslation that accidentally declared war on 3 separate star systems? Details remain classified. Well, I'm excited to assist with the upcoming peace talks between your people and the Krell Dominion, she said, taking a seat without being offered one. Typical human audacity. I settled my bulk into my hover chair, my 3 hearts beating with apprehension. Yes, the peace talks. I pronounced the words carefully as if they might bite. The Krell Dominion, our ancient enemies. After 17,000 years of conflict, both sides had grown weary. Resources depleted, populations decimated, neither side remembering exactly why we started fighting in the first place. Something about a religious disagreement? Or was it a trade dispute? The historical records were as muddled as a Neptunian swamp. I have spent the last 3 months studying both Voraxian and Krell linguistic patterns, cultural norms, and diplomatic protocols, Alara continued, pulling out one of those primitive data tablets humans insist on using. I have prepared extensive notes on potential pitfalls and communication strategies. I waved a dismissive appendage. The Krell are savages. They communicate primarily through threats and deception. Alara raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Ambassador, that's precisely the kind of attitude that perpetuates conflicts. The Krell have a complex honor-based communication system that can appear aggressive to outsiders, but they ate our previous diplomatic envoy, I interrupted flatly. She paused. Ah, well, cultural misunderstandings can be profound. I couldn't help but emit a sharp barking sound, our equivalent of laughter. This human had spirit, I'd give her that. You find diplomatic cannibalism amusing, Ambassador? She asked, her face showing that human expression of, what do they call it? Ah, yes, being mildly peeved. What I find amusing, Translator Dunst, is your optimism. It's refreshingly naive. She leaned forward, those green eyes suddenly intense. The United Earth Coalition didn't send me because I'm naive, Ambassador. They sent me because I get results. I negotiated peace between the Arcturian hegemony and the Rigelian Confederation after 3 centuries of war. by accidentally insulting the Arcturian Supreme Leader so severely he had a cardiac event, if I recall correctly. Ilara winced. That was unfortunate, but effective. His successor was much more amenable to peace. And the Taurian Accords? A complete success. After you accidentally released a pathogen that temporarily rendered both species leaders incapable of aggression, she coughed uncomfortably. That was never proven. Besides, the important thing is that they signed the treaty. I studied her carefully. Humans are strange creatures, so fragile physically, yet possessing a bizarre tenacity that borders on madness. And this particular human seemed especially unpredictable. "The Krell emissary arrives tomorrow," I said finally. "His name is Dracorvex, 6th Maw of the Dominion. He will be accompanied by 7 guards, all trained from hatching to kill Voraxians on sight." "Sounds friendly," Ilara muttered. "The negotiations will take place in Neutral Chamber 3. Both delegations will be unarmed, as per United Galactic Assembly protocols." Ilara nodded, making notes on her tablet. "And what exactly are the primary points of contention to be resolved?" I blinked all 4 of my eyes in sequence, a gesture of mild surprise. "After 17,000 years? There are many. Resource rights to the Cygnus Belt, religious differences regarding the Great Void, the disputed territories in the Antares sector, and of course the small matter of reparations for the countless atrocities committed by both sides. Starting with the easy stuff then," she said with a grimace, a peculiar human expression where they show teeth but not in a threatening way. "Perplexing. There is one more thing you should know," I added, my voice dropping to a lower register. "The Krell have a particular view of translators. Oh, in their culture, words have power, literal power. They believe that those who translate words from one language to another hold the essence of both species within them. This makes you, in their eyes, something sacred and dangerous simultaneously." Ilara's face did that thing humans do when they are processing new information. It went very still, except for small movements around the eyes. "So they will treat me with respect?" I made a gurgling sound deep in my throat sacs. "Or they might eat you to absorb your power. It really depends on the individual Krell." "That's not in any of the briefing materials I received. The United Earth Coalition prefers not to alarm its personnel with excessive details." She sighed, running a hand through her hair, another bizarre human gesture. "Well, it wouldn't be the first time I have been threatened with ritual consumption. The Andromedans have a similar custom, though they usually don't follow through." "Usually?" "What? Let's just say I'm still here," she replied with a wink. Yet another human facial contortion that supposedly conveys meaning. Ridiculous. The meeting continued for another hour as we discussed protocols, schedules, and potential scenarios. Throughout it all, I couldn't shake a growing sense of foreboding. Something about this human felt like a catalyst for chaos. Not malicious exactly, but consequential. As our meeting concluded and Ilara prepared to leave, I felt compelled to offer one final warning. Translator Dunst, a word of advice. The peace between our species is fragile, as delicate as a Jovian crystal flower. One wrong word, one misinterpreted gesture, could shatter it completely. She paused at the door, her expression suddenly serious. "I understand the stakes, Ambassador." "I always do." "Do you? 17,000 years of hatred and bloodshed don't disappear overnight. Both sides are looking for any excuse to resume hostilities." "Then we won't give them one," she said with that strange human confidence that borders on delusion. "History isn't just what happened before, Ambassador. It's what we choose to do next." With that profoundly simplistic philosophy, she departed, leaving me with a sense of impending doom that settled in all 3 of my stomachs. Little did I know just how right I was. The next day arrived with the subtle horror of inevitability. The Krell delegation docked at precisely the scheduled time, unnervingly punctual for a species known for their chaotic nature. I waited in neutral chamber 3, my advisors arrayed behind me, all of us dressed in formal diplomatic attire. Ilara stood slightly to my side, dressed in the simple black uniform of United Earth Coalition translators, her hair pulled back severely from her face. "Remember," I murmured to her, "do not make direct eye contact with Drakor Vex. The Krell consider it a challenge to authority." "Got it. No eye contact," she whispered back. "Anything else I should know at the last minute?" "Don't show your teeth when you speak. In Krell culture, exposed teeth are a death threat." "Seriously? You are telling me this now?" Before I could respond, the chamber doors slid open, and the Krell delegation entered. If humans find Voraxians unsettling, they find the Krell terrifying. Standing nearly 9 feet tall, with exoskeletons the color of congealed blood, 4 arms ending in serrated claws, and faces that are essentially masses of sensory organs surrounding vertical jaw structures, they are the stuff of human nightmares. Drakor Vex led the procession, his armored body adorned with trophies from countless battles. Each metallic clink of his movement echoed through the chamber like a death knell. The formal introductions began, with both sides reciting the ancient diplomatic phrases required by the United Galactic Assembly. And through it all, Ilara translated flawlessly, her voice never wavering, even when pronouncing the more difficult Krell phonetics that require 3 vocal channels. "We come seeking an end to the bloodshed," I stated, my words carefully chosen and rehearsed. Ilara translated into the harsh, clicking language of the Krell. Drakor Vex responded with a series of guttural sounds and mandible clicks that sounded vaguely threatening, even to those who couldn't understand them. "The Dominion acknowledges your desire for peace," Ilara translated smoothly. "They are prepared to discuss terms, provided proper respect is shown." So far, so good. We moved to the negotiation table, a massive circular structure designed to eliminate any perception of hierarchy. As we all took our positions, I noticed Ilara's face had gone slightly pale, a human indication of stress or illness. "Are you unwell?" I whispered. "I'm fine," she replied through barely moving lips. "Just remembered something I forgot to mention. The Krell dialect I studied has a regional variation. Their emissary speaks with an accent I wasn't fully prepared for." "Wonderful. Just wonderful." The negotiations began with traditional statements of grievances, a ceremonial recitation of wrongs suffered by both sides. This alone was expected to take several hours, as 17,000 years of conflict provides ample material. 3 hours in, during a particularly graphic description of a massacre on Vorax Prime 3 millennia ago, I noticed something odd. The Krell guards had begun shifting positions, moving subtly closer to their emissary. Their posture had changed, becoming more rigid, more alert. Something was wrong. I glanced at Ilara, who was translating my science advisor's detailed account of Krell atrocities. She seemed focused, professional, but there was a slight furrow to her brow that hadn't been there before. Drakor Vex suddenly interrupted with a sharp, explosive sound that made everyone in the chamber flinch. He rose to his full height, mandibles flaring wide to reveal the inner maw with its rotating teeth. "The emissary wishes to know," Ilara translated, her voice remarkably steady, "if the Voraxian delegation is deliberately insulting the Krell Dominion with this creative interpretation of historical events." I blinked in confusion. "What? No, we are simply recounting historical facts as documented in our archives." As Ilara translated my response, Drakor Vex's upper limbs began to vibrate, a sign of extreme agitation in Krell physiology. His response came as a torrent of clicking and hissing sounds. "The emissary says," Ilara translated carefully, "that your so-called historical facts are fabrications designed to portray the Krell as, offspring of waste-dwelling parasites who mate with corpses." My respiratory sacs nearly collapsed in shock. "That is absolutely not what we said." The chamber erupted into chaos. The Krell guards moved into defensive positions around their emissary, who was now emitting the high-pitched keening that precedes a Krell berserker rage. My advisors began shouting over one another, some calling for security, others attempting to salvage the situation diplomatically. Through it all, Elara stood perfectly still, her face a mask of concentration. Silence. I finally bellowed, my voice amplified by all three of my vocal sacs. The room quieted, though the tension remained thick enough to cut with a ceremonial dagger. "There has clearly been a misunderstanding," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Translator Dunst, please explain to the emissary that we meant no offense. We were simply recounting historical events as we understand them. Elara nodded and began speaking in Krell, but something was off. Her pronunciation seemed different, her cadence altered, and the reaction from the Krell was immediate and unexpected. Dracorvex went completely still. Then, to my utter astonishment, he lowered himself into what I recognized as a Krell gesture of deference. Behind him, his guards did the same. He spoke again, this time in shorter, more measured tones. Elara turned to me, her face unreadable. "The emissary apologizes for the misunderstanding. He says there is clearly much to discuss about our differing perspectives on history. He proposes a brief recess to collect himself." I agreed, too stunned to do anything else. As the Krell delegation filed out of the chamber, I pulled Elara aside. "What in the name of the three moons just happened?" I demanded. She swallowed hard. "I think I may have accidentally invoked an ancient Krell ritual phrase." "What ritual phrase?" "Well, I'm not entirely sure, but based on their reaction, I think I might have challenged Dracorvex to a sacred duel while simultaneously claiming religious authority over his ancestral line." I stared at her in horror. That's not possible. That would require you to speak in Royal Krell, a dialect known only to their ruling caste." She shrugged helplessly. "I have a good ear for languages." Before I could respond, my assistant Plek rushed into the chamber, his eye stalks fully extended in alarm. "Ambassador. Emergency communication from the United Galactic Assembly Security Council." "Not now, Plek. We are in the middle of a crisis. It's about the human translator. They are demanding her immediate arrest and detention." Both Elara and I froze. "What? On what grounds?" I asked. Plek's voice dropped to a whisper of dread. "War crimes. According to Galactic Law Section 47 Beta, regarding the illegal use of forbidden communication techniques in a diplomatic setting." I turned slowly to look at Elara, who had gone very, very still. "What exactly did you say to the Krell emissary?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Her green eyes met mine, wide with a dawning realization. "I'm not entirely sure. I was trying to de-escalate, to find some common ground. I switched to what I thought was a formal dialect to show respect, but—" Plek interrupted, his voice quavering. "The specific charge is unauthorized deployment of mimetic warfare against a protected sentient species." "Oh. Oh no! Mimetic warfare. Outlawed in all civilized systems after the Proxima Centauri catastrophe, where an entire species was driven to mass suicide by an engineered linguistic virus. The mere accusation was enough to warrant immediate containment protocols." "That's ridiculous," Elara protested. "I'm a translator, not a, what did you call it, mimetic warrior?" But I was already backing away from her, my protective membrane sliding over my eyes instinctively. "Security Protocol Omega-7, I said into my communicator. "Team to Neutral Chamber 3 immediately." "Ambassador, please," Elara said, her hands raised in a human gesture of surrender. "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't." The chamber doors burst open as station security personnel swarmed in, wearing the specialized helmets designed to filter all potentially harmful communication. "Elara Dunst," the security chief announced, "by authority of the United Galactic Assembly, you are hereby detained pending investigation into charges of illegal mimetic warfare. Please do not resist." "This is insane," she protested as they surrounded her. "I'm just a translator. I make mistakes sometimes, sure, but I'm not a war criminal." As they led her away, she looked back at me, those green eyes filled with confusion and betrayal. "Ambassador, you know this is wrong. Tell them." "Bem." But I said nothing. I couldn't. The implications were too severe, the risks too great. If she had indeed, even accidentally, deployed mimetic techniques against the Krell, the consequences could be catastrophic. The last thing she said before the doors closed behind her was, "I was just doing my job." I sank into my hover chair, all 6 of my limbs trembling. What had just happened? Was it possible that the United Earth Coalition had sent us not a translator, but a weapon? A human trained in the forbidden arts of mimetic manipulation? Or was she telling the truth? Just a talented linguist who made a catastrophic error. Either way, the peace talks were in shambles. 17,000 years of conflict, and our best chance for resolution had just been dragged away in restraints. And somehow I suspected this was only the beginning of our problems, because the Krell hadn't left the station. And they were demanding to speak with Alara Dunst again, privately. They want to what? Security Chief Vorn's facial tentacles contorted in what our species considers an expression of utter disbelief. All 7 of his eye stalks were fully extended, quivering with alarm. "The Krell delegation is demanding a private audience with the human prisoner," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady despite the mounting absurdity of the situation. We stood in the station's security hub, surrounded by monitors displaying various sections of the diplomatic quarter. One screen showed Alara Dunst in her containment cell, a sparse, white room designed to minimize any possibility of medic contamination. She sat perfectly still on the edge of her bunk, staring at the wall with that unnerving human intensity. "That is completely out of the question," Vorn declared, his carapace plates clicking nervously. "The prisoner is under Level 7 containment protocols, pending formal investigation by the Assembly's Security Council. No contact is permitted, especially not with the very species she allegedly attacked." I sighed, my respiratory sacs deflating dramatically. "I understand the protocols, Vorn, but we have a situation here that goes beyond standard procedure. The Krell are not leaving. In fact, they have moved their battlecruiser into a defensive position near the station's primary docking ring." "Are they threatening us?" Vorn's color shifted toward the ultraviolet end of the spectrum, a sign of extreme stress in our species. "Not explicitly. But Drakor Vex has informed me that this matter can only be resolved through direct communication with Translator Dunst." Vorn began pacing, all 6 limbs moving in perfect coordination. "This makes no sense. If she truly deployed mimetic warfare against them, why would they want to expose themselves to further contamination?" That was the question that had been bothering me as well. Nothing about this situation followed any pattern I recognized from my centuries of diplomatic experience. "Perhaps," I suggested cautiously, "we have misunderstood what actually happened in that negotiation room." Vorn stopped pacing abruptly. "Are you suggesting the charges are false?" "I'm suggesting that we may not have all the facts. The human claims she made a simple translation error. A translation error that caused the Krell emissary to bow in submission? A translation error that triggered an emergency alert from the Security Council?" Vorn's skepticism dripped from every syllable. "The Security Council acted on automated protocols," I reminded him. "The AI monitoring system detected linguistic patterns consistent with Class 3 mimetic structures and immediately flagged it as potential warfare. But AI systems have been known to give false positives, especially when dealing with unfamiliar language combinations." Vorn's central eye stalk fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity. "You seem remarkably eager to defend the human, Ambassador. May I remind you that if she is indeed a mimetic warrior, even this conversation might be contaminated by secondary exposure?" I bristled, my dorsal spines rising involuntarily. "I am not defending anyone. I am trying to prevent a diplomatic catastrophe. The first peace talks between our species in 700 years are hanging by a thread, and a Krell battlecruiser is parked outside our station. If hearing out their request might resolve this situation, then it deserves consideration." A tense silence fell between us, broken only by the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Finally, Vorn spoke. The protocol for such exceptional circumstances would require approval from the station commander, presence of at least 2 security officers with mimetic filtering implants, the full audio-visual recording, and emergency containment measures standing by. So it's possible. Technically, yes, but I must formally register my objection. Noted, I said, already moving toward the communication panel. I will speak with Commander Traz immediately. 3 hours later, I watched through a reinforced observation window as Alara Dunst was escorted into a specially prepared meeting room. She had been fitted with a vocal modulator collar, a device that would filter out any potentially dangerous mimetic patterns from her speech. To a human, it would seem excessive, even cruel. To those of us who had witnessed the aftermath of the Proxima Centauri catastrophe, it was merely prudent. Commander Traz hovered beside me, her gravitational suspension field humming softly. As a member of the gaseous Halexian species, she existed as a controlled plasma state within a containment field, making her conveniently immune to mimetic warfare, which requires biological neural pathways to function. "This is highly irregular, Ambassador," she noted, her voice emerging from her translation device with a metallic timbre. "These are highly irregular circumstances, Commander." Indeed. In 27 standard cycles managing this station, I have never seen the Krell behave this way. They are typically more explosive in their diplomacy. Before I could respond, the chamber's second door slid open and Drakor Vex entered, alone, without his guards. Another unprecedented development. The Krell emissary's massive form seemed to fill the small room. He towered over Alara, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lighting. For a moment, neither spoke, sizing each other up across the simple metal table. Then, to our collective shock, Drakor Vex lowered himself onto the floor in a formal prostration posture. "What in the name of the 3 moons?" I whispered. Alara looked equally stunned. Her voice, when she finally spoke, came through the modulator with a slight electronic distortion. "Emissary Drakor Vex, I don't understand. Why are you?" The Krell interrupted with a series of complex clicks and whistles. Without her translator function, Alara couldn't understand him. But we could, through the room's monitoring system. The voice of truth honors us with her presence. The translation appeared on our screens. "The Dominion awaits your command, Holy Oracle." I nearly choked on my own respiratory fluids. "Holy Oracle? Command?" Alara shook her head, clearly frustrated by the communication barrier. "I can't understand you without my translation capabilities, and they have disabled them because they think I did something to you." Drakor Vex rose to his full height again and turned toward the observation window. Though he couldn't see us through the one-way material, he seemed to know exactly where we were. He spoke directly to us, his mandibles clicking in what I recognized as a formal pattern. "Remove the silencing device from the Holy One immediately, or face the wrath of the entire Krell Dominion." Commander Traz's containment field fluctuated her species' equivalent of nervous fidgeting. "Is he serious?" "Oh, he's serious," I confirmed. "The question is, why? What did she say to him?" Traz considered for approximately 3 seconds, lightning-fast decision-making for her species. "Remove the modulator, but keep all other containment protocols active." Commander, the regulations clearly state. Vorn began to protest. "The regulations don't cover being threatened by a Krell battlecruiser, Chief Vorn. Remove it." "Yeah." A security officer entered the room and deactivated Alara's vocal modulator collar. But it fell away from her neck, leaving a faint red mark on her human skin. Alara rubbed her throat. "Thank you," she said, her natural voice restored. Drakor Vex immediately began speaking to her in the complex Krell language. And to everyone's surprise, Alara responded fluently, without hesitation, in the same language. "She shouldn't be able to do that," Vorn muttered beside me. "Our linguistic analysis indicates she had only basic proficiency in common Krell dialects." "This is something else," We watched in stunned silence as the conversation continued, incomprehensible to us until the translation system caught up. You spoke the words of awakening, Drakor Vex was saying. Words lost to us for millennia, preserved only in our most sacred texts. Words that can only be spoken by the prophesied oracle. Ilara's expression was a fascinating mixture of human confusion and growing realization. The phrase I used, it was just something I found in an old reference text. I was trying to be respectful. No human could pronounce those words correctly unless guided by the ancestral truth, Drakor Vex insisted. The prophecy is clear, from beyond the stars will come a soft-skinned one, speaking the forgotten tongue, who will unite the severed fragments of the dominion. Ilara laughed nervously. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not an oracle or prophet. I'm just good with languages. But Drakor Vex was not deterred. You spoke words that activated ancestral memory patterns dormant in our genetic code for generations. You triggered the recognition response in every Krell who heard you. This is not coincidence. This is destiny. I turned to Commander Traz, my voice low. Is it possible? Could she have accidentally reproduced some kind of genetic activation phrase? Traz's containment field pulsed in what I recognized as her equivalent of a shrug. The Krell are known to have extensive genetic memory systems. It's part of what makes them such effective warriors, instinctive knowledge passed down through bloodlines. If certain phrases could activate dormant memories, then it wouldn't be mimetic warfare at all, I finished. It would be… what? Cultural reclamation? Inside the room, Ilara was attempting to reason with the Krell emissary. Even if I did speak some special phrase, that doesn't make me your oracle. It was an accident. There are no accidents in the Great Pattern, Drakor Vex replied solemnly. For 17,000 years we have fought the Voraxians, never remembering why. You have awakened the memory of what came before the hatred, before the Great Sundering. He reached into a compartment in his exoskeleton and removed a small crystalline object. It pulsed with an inner light that shifted through colors I'm fairly certain humans can't even perceive. This is the heart of Krell, he said, placing it on the table between them. Our most sacred relic. Only the true oracle can activate its full potential. Ilara stared at the object, understandably wary. And what exactly would that entail? Simply speak to it in the true tongue, as you spoke to me. Ilara hesitated, then looked toward the observation window. Is this allowed? I'm still technically under arrest for war crimes, remember? Commander Traz activated the room's communication system. Proceed, Translator Dunst, but with caution. Ilara took a deep breath and leaned toward the crystal. She spoke a phrase that made the translation system glitch momentarily. Whatever she said, it contained phonetic patterns our technology struggled to process. The crystal flared brilliantly, expanding into a holographic display that filled the entire room. It showed two species, early Voraxians and Krell, working together, building cities, sharing technologies. The images shifted, showing generations of cooperation and mutual prosperity. Then came scenes of a catastrophic event, some kind of cosmic disaster. A dying star, massive evacuation efforts, desperate last stands, and finally confusion, accusations, betrayal. The beginning of the war that had consumed both our civilizations for millennia. The hologram collapsed back into the crystal, leaving the room in stunned silence. The Great Sundering, Drakor Vex said quietly. When the homeworld died and truth died with it. Each side blamed the other for failing to prevent the catastrophe. Each generation taught the next to hate, until the reason was forgotten, and only the hatred remained. Ilara sat frozen, her human face displaying what I have come to recognize as shock. I didn't know. None knew. None remembered. Until you awakened the memory. I found myself moving before conscious thought, pressing the access panel to enter the meeting room. Thorn called after me, but I ignored him. This moment was too important for protocol. As I entered, both Ilara and Drakor Vex turned to face me. Ambassador Grixnor, Ilara said, her voice unsteady. Did you see? I saw, I confirmed, my own voice hardly more than a whisper. Our peoples, we were allies once. Drakor Vex's mandibles shifted into what I suddenly recognized with ancestral memory I didn't know I possessed as a gesture of solemn acknowledgement. The cycle of hatred can end, he said, if we choose to remember what came before it. I felt something shift inside me, a weight I hadn't known I carried, suddenly lifting. 17,000 years of enmity, based on a misunderstanding that had calcified into unquestioned truth. The peace talks, I said slowly. They can become something more than we imagined. Reconciliation, Drakor Vex agreed. Reunion. Ilara looked between us, a tentative smile forming on her face. So, does this mean I'm not a war criminal anymore? Commander Traz had followed me into the room, her containment field shimmering with excitement. I believe we can safely reclassify your actions, Translator Dunst. Not mimetic warfare, but rather cultural archaeology? I suggested. Linguistic restoration? Offered Drakor Vex. How about accidental cosmic intervention? Ilara said with that strange human expression, the baring of teeth, that somehow indicates amusement rather than aggression. The charges were formally dropped within the hour. The Security Council, presented with the evidence of the crystal's revelations, quickly reclassified the incident. The peace talks resumed, though they became something quite different, discussions not of how to end a war, but of how to rebuild an ancient alliance. Ilara Dunst remained as translator, though her role expanded considerably. The Krell still insisted on treating her with near religious reverence, which made her visibly uncomfortable. Humans and their bizarre modesty. 3 cycles later, as the formal Alliance Restoration Treaty was being prepared, I found Ilara alone in one of the station's observation lounges, staring out at the stars. Quite a view, isn't it? I said, hovering beside her. From here you can see both Vorax Prime and the Krell homeworlds in the same field of vision. Poetic, she replied with a small smile. 2 worlds that spent thousands of years trying to destroy each other, peacefully sharing the same sky. Thanks to you. She shook her head. I still don't understand how I did it. That phrase I used, I found it in an obscure text in the United Earth Coalition archives. The notation simply said it was a formal Krell greeting. I had no idea it would trigger whatever it triggered. I studied her carefully. Perhaps some mysteries are best left unexplained. She turned to face me, those green human eyes unnervingly direct. Do you think the UEC knew? Did they send me here specifically because they somehow knew I could speak this true tongue? It was a question I'd been pondering myself. The coincidence seemed too great, the right human, with the right phrase, at precisely the right moment in history. Would it matter if they did? I asked finally. She considered this. I suppose not. The outcome is the same either way. Peace instead of war. More than peace, I corrected her. Understanding. Remembrance. We stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the distant stars. Finally, I voiced the question that had been bothering me since the revelation. What will you do now, Translator Dunst? Now that you are considered a holy figure to one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. She laughed, that strange, musical sound humans make. Run away, probably? I'm a translator, not a prophet. Besides, I have a feeling the UEC will have another assignment for me soon enough. Another ancient conflict to accidentally resolve? God, I hope not, she said with feeling. I'd like my next job to involve significantly less risk of execution for war crimes. Thank you very much. I made the barking sound that passes for laughter among my kind. You humans. Always complaining about the most interesting parts of your jobs. She smiled, showing those flat teeth that no longer seemed quite so primitive to me. That's us. Bizarre to the end. As if on cue, her communication device chimed. She checked it and grimaced. Speaking of the UEC, they are calling me back. Apparently there's a situation in the Andromeda sector that requires my special talents. The hive mind collective and the silicon consciousness are on the brink of war, I noted. A conflict that has been brewing for centuries. Wonderful, she muttered. More ancient enemies who just need to talk it out. As she prepared to leave, I felt compelled to offer one final observation. You know, Alara Dunst, for all your species' fragility and peculiar behaviors, you possess something remarkable. What's that? An uncanny ability to accidentally commit war crimes. Hope, I said simply. Unreasonable, persistent hope. You look at 17,000 years of hatred and think, I can fix this. It's absurd, it's irrational. But it worked, she pointed out. Yes, I acknowledged, it did. Perhaps the galaxy needs more of your particular brand of absurdity. She laughed again and extended her hand in that strange human farewell gesture. I reciprocated, no longer bothered by the touch of her alien skin. Until our paths cross again, Ambassador Grixnar. May your words continue to bring understanding, Translator Dunst, even when they accidentally trigger interstellar incidents. As I watched her departure vessel pull away from the station, I couldn't help but wonder what ancient conflicts would be resolved by her next translation error. The thought was simultaneously terrifying and oddly comforting. Humans. Truly bizarre creatures. But perhaps exactly what our complicated, conflict-ridden galaxy needs.